Don't let the accent fool you. He was born in Brooklyn. He probably traveled the furthest today out of any other speakers or maybe anyone here from across the pond in Europe. And his name is Akin, and he's the founder of Azteco. He has a popular medium where has tons of writings, very philosophical things about whether Bitcoin is not money and is actually a database, something that he could probably debate with anyone over an adult beverage later this evening. Or some of the other things, like he doesn't really like the term Bitcoin maximalist and how people throw that around. He has an interesting take on that. He's one of the most highly intellectual speakers that I know, and he has an incredible understanding of Bitcoin, cryptography, software development. And I owe him a lot because he actually motivated me to start my company of Lightning Ventures. And if it wasn't for that very first Azteco fundraise, before we had started what we were doing, I was just helping them. I don't think I would have been able to do what we're doing now with funding companies. And I'm a proud advisor to Azteco. I love their business. They don't move fast and break things. They're slow and steady, and they've got a lot of excellent, exciting announcements that are going to be coming up in the following weeks. So he has a lot to say. He's an outstanding person. He's a dear friend of mine. I want to yield the little bit of my time so that he can have a little bit extra. He's a great guy. So give it up for Akin or Beauty On, and if you ask him nicely, he will unblock you. Give it up for him, all right?
Bad man. Well, thank you for that lovely and charming introduction, Mike. And most of it's true. Some of it isn't true, but there you go. So my talk today is not showing here. So ideally, it would be nice for me to get this on the screen large. Let's have a look. It's not there. I can't see the whole slide.
Oh, I can expand that.
Please, thank you. So, for Bitcoin to fulfill its entire promise, it has to be used by many people. And essentially, that's the focus of my talk today. And what we're calling this inside Azteco is second generation Bitcoin. Now, the first generation of Bitcoin businesses and projects were basically about bootstrapping the whole system. And this is absolutely essential in most software projects. Like, for example, the Linux kernel started off by one man in his bedroom writing his own Linux kernel. And then the whole Linux ecosystem is built on top of that, and it's taken over the entire world. So Linux is an example of how things start small and then grow to a global scale when people pour in their work onto it. But in order for that to happen, Linux had to become useful to people outside of the small number of developers who were building on it. So this has to happen in Bitcoin for the power of Bitcoin to be unleashed and the purpose of Bitcoin to be fulfilled. And so this is what we're trying to midwife with Azteco by thinking about what Bitcoin looks like in a scenario when there are many, many people using it. So, first of all, it's important to say that Bitcoin is nothing without its users. It's too hard for people to understand, and understanding Bitcoin is an artificial block to adoption. So users don't have to understand Bitcoin in order to make use of it. They need to use Bitcoin. And so using Bitcoin means having users. And therefore, without you, there is no Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is about the users using it and not about the technical matters that go into making it what it does. So, by removing the unnecessary requirements of understanding Bitcoin before using it, we can help spread globally. We can help it spread globally very, very quickly. So Bitcoin is about people. It's not about technology, even though the technology is super, super interesting and fundamental to making it work. It's not, actually not about technology, it's about people. And so given that, we have to change our behavior. I say we, people who want Bitcoin to fulfill its full promise, have to change their thinking about how people are made to interact with it. Now, there's some lovely theories about Bitcoin, and there's some very, very good books. I'm sure you're all familiar with this book, which is a very, very wonderful book about Bitcoin. And so books and podcasts and articles that describe how Bitcoin works and the thinking behind it are an absolute requirement for a specialist and the people who provide services to Bitcoin users, who are the ordinary people who don't have time to read books and find out about them. Now, we know this is the case because there are many people on, for example, Facebook, who don't know that it's actually written in PHP. And so you don't need to know that Facebook is written in PHP in order to make use of it. And this kind of thinking has to come to Bitcoin. Now, it's important that somebody somewhere understands that Facebook is written on PHP, and actually it's the Facebook developers that have to understand that. And given what PHP is, maybe they shouldn't do that, but that's another story. So it's very important that some people understand Bitcoin so that the network can be protected, the network can maintain its utility and spread everywhere. But consumers don't need to know anything about that. It's like asking a consumer to know about the formulation of bubblegum in order to chew bubblegum. You don't need to know what's in bubblegum to chew it. You need teeth, and that's all it's required, teeth and a strong jaw. So without consumers being onboarded to Bitcoin in a frictionless way, it's not going to be possible for us to capture the market and displace fiat, which is the actual purpose of Bitcoin. The purpose of Bitcoin is to give the world a useful and sound money to replace fiat. That's what it's for. And if anybody comes to you and says it's for something else, of course they're at liberty to say that, but it's actually not true. Bitcoin is done for one purpose only. But because it's a generic database, and you can do literally anything with a database, store anything, many people have come in and tried to divert the purpose of Bitcoin, and I personally think that's a mistake. And I'm sure you're all aware of this WorldCoin phenomenon that's come about, and it's not a good thing. And that's an understatement. So without consumers being onboarded to Bitcoin, it's not going to be possible for us to capture the market. And that's what has to happen. And so Bitcoin companies have to aim for the consumer squarely, have to aim for the consumer on the territory where they are. They have to go to the consumers where they are. You can't ask people to come to where the Bitcoiners are or where the enthusiasts are, because they're not going to do that. There is no WhatsApp community, for example, and that preceded the mass adoption of WhatsApp. And the same commercial forces and incentives will work with Bitcoin if people start thinking about it correctly and contextualizing it inside of this market opportunity to serve people with Bitcoin in its primary function as a replacement for fiat. So, how much time is it going to take for us to get this done? And I say us, meaning people who are involved in Bitcoin. The world population is very, very big, and there's lots of people. And the way that WorldCoin is working, it's going to take them 105 years to onboard everybody. Now, that's 105 years is a very, very long time. It'll be before the end of the block emission that they finish if they continue at this rate. And that's, of course, leaving aside that this WorldCoin is an absolutely terrible, appalling system, that it's designed to violate the rights of all the users who are being onboarded to it. And I don't know if you know that they're actually paying people to get onto this WorldCoin. I think they're paying them a pittance, and they're not even paying them in fiat. They're paying them in this fraudulent altcoin, WorldCoin, to bribe them to go on board. So they're not providing any actual utility to anybody. It's just a scooping up, a herding operation to get people onto WorldCoin. I think this is appalling, and they're free to do whatever they like, of course, but our job as Bitcoiners is to beat WorldCoin and to prevent them from flooding the market with a global altcoin that's designed to harvest people's information, which they've openly admitted they're going to make available to all the governments on Earth. So this is not just about Bitcoin fanboyism and being against altcoins. This is a super dangerous project that all Bitcoiners should have uppermost in their mind that we have to defeat. And we can actually defeat it if we start thinking commercially about giving Bitcoin to every single person who needs it. So Bitcoin onboarding cannot therefore be onerous, invasive, unethical, and essentially non-commercial. It's very important that we have the correct tools presented to people in the correct formats so that the onboarding sequence and experience is super frictionless, very, very friendly. And currently, our go-to wallet is Wallet of Satoshi because it's the easiest to onboard people onto. It works flawlessly every time we present them with an Azteco voucher to redeem. And so this is the ideal form of the onboarding experience that has to be universal in Bitcoin if we're going to onboard people at a faster rate than the enemies of Bitcoin are currently planning to do. So how fast is fast? WhatsApp took 4 years and 8 months to onboard 1 billion users. Now, I think that's a very, very big number. Well, just a seventh of all the people on Earth. And they did it essentially without any communities, with very little advertising. Nobody had to read any books to get onboarded onto WhatsApp. And they've reached essentially a seventh of the entire world's population. And so not only did they reach the world with a huge number of people, but WhatsApp itself has brought end-to-end encryption and normalized end-to-end encryption for 1 billion people. And this is a very big deal because the state doesn't like end-to-end encryption. And so this is a monumental, fantastic achievement that they've pulled off. And this is decades after PGP and other things were released to encrypt people's emails, that summarily failed to reach enough people to make it a threat to our enemies. And so WhatsApp is a very, very important example for Bitcoiners because it proves that onboarding people in huge numbers can be done, and it can be done very, very quickly. So how are we going to pull this off? We're going to have to use the best in class tools that are not invasive and that simply work. And these are examples of those sorts of tools. We have the Phoenix Wallet of Satoshi, Blue Wallet, Samurai Wallet, which is one of my favorites, Moon Wallet, and Breeze, all of which allow people to get on board very, very quickly. And the black hexagon there is a tool that shall not be named today, but you'll be hearing about it very soon, and it's going to be another one of the game-changing apps that's going to be released. So all friction has to be removed, including the psychological, technical, linguistic, and financial barriers that sometimes get put in front of users inadvertently because people are trying to help. the fact is that these things actually don't help most of the time, and it's removing of language that helps people, not adding of language. It's the removal of context, not the adding of context, that helps people, because the consumer is not interested in learning about the tools that they use. If they were, the iPhone user wouldn't have even a tenth of the apps that they have on their phone. These apps just work out of the box. Indeed, the iPhone and the MacBook work out of the box without any manual being shipped with these devices. That's the kind of thinking that must be brought to Bitcoin. If we don't do that, we being the people who are specializing in delivering Bitcoin services, if we don't do that, then somebody is going to come and do that kind of Apple thinking for another project like this WorldCoin, or maybe even something worse. And then we'll all be scratching our heads saying, where did it all go wrong? But by then it'll be too late. So in order for us to outflank these well-funded altcoin and other people in these fiat hucksters, meaning the CDBCs, it's important for us to copy the techniques that are proven to work to onboard many, many, many people onto both apps and to devices. And that's why a global campaign designed to reach the ordinary consumer, appealing to his needs only, delivered by a viral campaign or some kind of PR campaign, needs to be mounted by at least one company in order to make this happen. Now, WhatsApp managed to do this for themselves using the techniques that they used, and it's very, I asked people about whether or not they've seen a campaign advertising WhatsApp, and surprisingly few ever remember seeing it, but they have it on their phone. And so something else was being used to get people onto WhatsApp. And it's that kind of viral element that needs to be harnessed for Bitcoin. And that means the Bitcoin wallets and Bitcoin itself, the ability to get Bitcoin itself, which is of course what Azteco does. We make it super simple to get Bitcoin. Uh-oh, here we go again. It's a glitchy device. And it's glitching on my time, which is not appreciated. Okay. Okay, I'm trying to press once, and press once, and press once again, and press once again. Okay. And this is an example. I put this slide in here to give an example of the counterintuitive marketing that companies have used. In this case, Apple, once again. They paid this gentleman, the blender man. I don't know if any of you remember this. This was from 2009, 2010. And this gentleman, who was the campaign manager for the blend tech company that makes blenders, put these different models of iPhone into a blender, which is famous for being able to blend anything. Now, it's a very odd idea. Why would somebody put an iPhone into a blender? First of all, it's very dangerous because it can explode because the battery has lithium in it. But why would it doesn't make any sense. Why would somebody do this? The reason is that there was a PR campaign behind the iPhone that Apple used and put this strange concoction together to promote the iPhone. Now, I don't know if it worked to drive sales, but I certainly remembered it. And so things like this have to be done with Bitcoin. Otherwise, we're going to fall behind to the people who do things like this. Obviously, you can't put a WorldCoin into a blender, but it'll be something absurd like this that will be memorable, and which will take away the stench of risk around WorldCoin, which I think they're going to start to face, because I don't know if you've heard, the Kenyan government has banned them from operating inside Kenya. So they have a lot of work to do to remove the stigma of this terrible device looking into the eyes of their citizens and recording them onto this global database. And so Bitcoiners have to harness this kind of thinking. It takes only one thing, and that's money. You have to have the money to buy a PR firm, a marketing firm, to concoct these things. And they sit their job is to sit around all day making up these campaigns, and they're very, very good at it. And so it it requires people who run these companies to be able to know that they need this job and to let these companies run wild with these crazy ideas. And so here we go again. So once again, to recap, which is basically what I was just saying, why would Apple pay a PR firm to hire blend tech to blend phones over and over for model after model after model? What was behind the thinking? And so marketing is sometimes counterintuitive, and it needs experts in the field to execute it. And when they come to you and say, we're going to put your thing into a blender, don't worry, it's going to work. You might scratch your head and think, oh, it doesn't sound like it makes sense. But then there's going to be metrics that will show you that it has actually worked. And so the important step is to get to the place where you're ready to hire these kinds of companies, pay the money to get the work done, and then release it without being frightened about what the outcome's going to be. And so the message is the medium. I'm sure you've heard of Marshall McLuhan's The Medium is the Message. And in Bitcoin, because it's a simulation of money that uses messaging, it's a pithy term like this that needs to be leveraged to get people to understand what Bitcoin actually is. And as Mike hinted before I came on, I've been asserting for many years that Bitcoin actually isn't money. It's just a database where messages are stored and things are accounted for. And so when you think of it like that, it's as a starting point, you can start to recontextualize Bitcoin into not a fintech service, but a messaging service. A messaging service in exactly the same form as the ones you get on WhatsApp. And knowing that WhatsApp has become super successful at spreading a messaging app across the world, if we take this as our starting point, just for an example, you're more likely to get a better result than we've had over the 11 years of the attempts of people to spread Bitcoin to the ordinary man and ordinary woman. So as far as I'm concerned, it hasn't worked, and we need to change the way we think about Bitcoin and how we contextualize it so that it can become more palatable to the man in the street. And so when we talk about people getting onto Bitcoin, in our case, there's a very few number of steps that they have to go through to do it. We have a person who has a problem with an institution or a problem with an institution or of institutions. They hear something about Bitcoin, this amazing thing about Bitcoin. They'll read it in TechCrunch, wherever it is, and they decide that they want this thing. They find a site that sells them this thing. Hopefully it's us and not the bad guys. And then there is a point at which their path goes one of two directions, depending on how they've been introduced to Bitcoin, this idea of this new synthetic money that's on the market. And that is the point of danger. They can either go to the dark side of all of this business, which I'm sure you recognize what those companies are, which essentially is death. It's the death of their privacy, the death of their ability to use and be in contact with sound money, to be able to spend and do whatever they want with their money, or the person thrives. And the person thrives on ethical Bitcoin companies, ethical Bitcoin apps where they can receive money in amounts that's without an upper limit, sometimes a lower limit depending on what the fees is for sending. But they have total control over their own money. Nobody can stop them from sending or receiving their own money. They have no accounts that can be closed down because you said something rude on Twitter or whatever it is. Oh, they call it X now. And so these are the options. We're either going to go to the bad guys or to ethical Bitcoin and to liberty in money on a global scale. And so this is why it's so important for us to beat these people to the punch. We've got to beat them to getting to the billions of people. And because WorldCoin, just for example, has such an onerous onboarding method, and Wallet Satoshi has literally no friction, this is the answer to spread these apps as quickly as possible. We have to convince people that indeed they do need these apps. And so the maximum danger area is right here, where they find out they want Bitcoin or something like it, and they find a site. And so we've got to get to these people at that point before they get to the green dot, where they go either one way or the other way. And I put this slide in just as a diversion. I don't know if any of you are interested in cinema, but there's a movie that you must watch called Colossus: The Forbin Project. And being a fan of this movie, I realized that the C of that terrible company is the same as the C in the Colossus movie. So you watch that movie, and then this slide will make a little bit more sense to you. And so let's go right back through all these stages, right back, taking it all the way to the green dot. And this green dot is the moment of the transformation. Now, I've been talking about this transformation for many years, where we're going to see the end of the fiat systems and a move to Bitcoin. So when we talk about Azteco and the services that are going to bring this, we have essentially three questions. What do we offer? We offer Bitcoin. How will it make our lives better? You will have Bitcoin. And what do you need to buy it? Fraudulent fake fiat. Now, Mike Jarmus has a box out at his stall where you can put in a $5 note and get Bitcoin through Azteco with one of his little boxes. So that's what we're trying to do. That's what we need to do. And for this to happen, some things have to go away. And on September 4th, the old look and feel of Azteco is going to go away, and we're going to get to a new look and feel for Azteco, a consumerized look and feel for Azteco, and it's going to be the first in the new consumer Bitcoin category, the first brand in that category, and a total recontextualization of Bitcoin. We're going to completely reframe Bitcoin. It's a second generation buying experience with a radically new user experience presentation. Now, there's some other things that are going to come along with this, and these are absolutely essential through many, many years of research on this, and we think we've got it right. We think we've got the formula right to recontextualize and consumerize Bitcoin. And I'm afraid this means the abandonment of Bitcoin culture, because that Bitcoin culture hasn't worked. And it's like Einstein says, if you keep doing something wrong, something that's not working over and over again, you're the one that's got a problem. It's a very badly paraphrased, so forgive me for that. But we are bringing this new experience with global reach in terms of distribution. It's truly borderless, which means it's all over the entire world. And we're going to reach everybody. We're going to onboard billions of people, and ethical Bitcoin is going to be normalized. People are not going to be signing up for Bitcoin wallets as they used to. We're going to normalize the idea that you don't have to sign up for a tool so you can use your own money. This is absolutely crucial and essential if Bitcoin is going to fulfill its entire promise. So we are almost at the launch point for this new consumer-friendly consumer Bitcoin experience, which is, I'm sure you're going to find to be absolutely astonishing. And the constituency we're going for is a global one. It's the people like this who are our target audience, of which there are literally billions. They all have mobile phones. They all have a need for money. A lot of these people are unbanked, and when they're in a country where they have access to a bank account, sometimes they're not allowed to send money outside of the jurisdiction because of some crazy laws. All this needs to be changed. All this needs to go away. And so that is essentially what we're doing. And this is the last slide of the talk. And this is a warning to everybody in this room. Don't play with stupid things. And that's my talk. Thank you very much.